right. Welcome to another series in our Industry Uncovered Ag Tech podcast here at Charles Aris Executive Search. My name is Eric Spell, and I lead the agricultural practice here within our firm. Our team has conducted a number of placements in the biological space. We're going to learn a little bit more today what the biological space is about. We are very fortunate to have Keri Carstens with us today. She's the CEO of Jord BioScience. So, Keri, thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to have you. Thank you for carving out a bit of time. I'd like for you to give an overview of your role and organization.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Really excited to be here today and appreciate the opportunity to talk about Jord and to talk about biologicals. So I have the privilege of serving as the CEO of Jord BioScience. What that means is, of course, leading the organization as we grow and scale up. So we're a startup company, but in growth mode at this point in time, have our first revenue in and serving clients actively today, and really excited about what the future holds for what we can do for the ag industry.
Well, you have had an interesting career, one of which that has positioned you as an expert in the field. And if you don't mind, that we have some listeners today that may be part of the private equity world that has interest in the biological space and the crop protection industry. Can you give our listeners that may not be familiar, Keri, with an overview of the biologicals and their role, and maybe a bit about where people may have some misunderstandings with biologicals?
Yeah, that's it. There's a lot to unpack there, so hopefully we don't use the whole time for that. But I think we can definitely get some things out there and help raise the overall understanding. So if you think about this, for sort of history of agriculture, what's really important to realize is humans have been using biological-based products for millennia. When you look backwards and think about using manure or other amendments to add to soil to be able to enhance crop growth, that would be one of the earliest examples likely. But other things that we've done over time as humans is to isolate microbes that have distinct characteristics that can help to protect against insect pests, other things that can be predators of plants, certainly disease protection as well. So through human history, there's been a recognition that you can use, nature-inspired tools to help with crop growth. And also just the recognition, what the science tells us, but, studying evolution and ecology of plants have always needed microbes. So that the fact that plants could be on Earth is because microbes have enabled that. So that's sort of a foundation understanding that we have. And then when you look at kind of the history within the industry, a lot of that has evolved around, biopesticide use. So like I said, insect control or disease suppression. And then as we, grow in our understanding of plant nutritional needs and crop physiology, as that science advanced, you have biological tools, biological products that have advanced alongside of that. And that can be anything from a microbe, good beneficial bacteria, like we talked about before, to other things that are maybe fermentation products from microbes. So plant extracts could be another example. So the biological space is a vast one. And I think there's some great landscape work that's been done out there that can show you the number of companies and the number of spaces that they operate in, everything from microbes, like we talked about, to beneficial insects, to, plant extract compounds and molecules that can be beneficial that are nature derived. So that it's a huge space. And if you think about the example of what I just said, that would be sort of like saying you could group crop protection, chemistry, and seed all together and call that one space. That's in essence the vastness of the types of products and the science that it takes to really develop biologicals. So it's a complex space, but it's one that we know we need.
Very good. And at what pace compared to traditional products in the space, how are the biologicals growing, and what do you foresee being 3 to 5 years down the road in terms of adoption by the farmers?
Yeah, it's for all the data that I've seen, especially recently, it's the fastest growing segment for crop inputs, period. So the CAGRs that I've seen are 14 to 19%. really quick growing in Latin America in particular. The Brazilian adoption of biologicals is impressive. This is one case where you actually see North America lagging a little bit behind in other regions, but not in a bad way. It's still a really fast pace of growth when you look at those CAGRs. But from an industry growth perspective, this is where you see a lot of the majors also making big investments, because there's that recognition both of the growth, so the market potential, but also on the flip side of this, the regulatory realities for crop protection chemistries from the synthetic or traditional paths that we've seen of success to date. It's getting harder and harder to find molecules and get them registered and keep them registered based on the regulatory hurdles that you see in the traditional crop protection space. And so that recognition from companies that have traditionally been operating in that space has led them to make significant investments in biologicals portfolios, whether that's through their own innate growth or acquisitions and mergers that they've done recently. So there's a big opportunity here. People recognize it both from the demand side of things, growers wanting these tools, but also the regulatory pressures that are pushing us more toward these types of products.
And in terms of sustainability, we hear a lot about that today. How do biologicals play in the lane of sustainability?
Yeah, they're excellent tools for that. So, very complementary to management practices that farmers, I do have a personal opinion about sustainability. We say we want more sustainable practices, and I think farmers are amazing in that they have done amazing things for environmental and economic sustainability over time. And so how do we just continue to enhance that? It's not that they haven't been sustainable in the past. It's just that we're asking for more or different things of them. And really, biologicals are a great tool in the overall toolbox for farmers to be able to continue to add those practices to their operation or refine how they're doing it. I think if you look at sustainability in a broad sense, that can include soil health, that can include, also from the economic side of things, being able to have tools that have a great return on investment, but also maybe have broad-based ways that they can provide benefits for crops. That's the thing that's been really interesting for me as I've gotten deeper into this part of the industry is, a single microbe can actually do a number of things. They have a lot of genes, so their DNA is just as complex as ours or crops. And so they have the ability to do things like provide plant protection from disease. At the same time, they might be encouraging, phosphate availability. So that it's really fascinating to think of how they can have a multifaceted impact for sustainable practices on the farm.
Right. So as you consider the technology and the science, what technological advancements do you believe are needed to further enhance and revolutionize this sector?
Yeah, I think what I love is that we are sitting right at the best time we possibly could to expand on what biologicals can do for farmers. So it's understanding everything from the genetics and the complexity that I talked about with the genes that a microbe might have, and what those genes can do. So the compounds that can be produced that have plant benefits, all the way to the ecology of how the plant and the microbe and microbes between microbe in the soil can interact for the benefit or detriment of plants. We now have the scientific capabilities and the data science and analytics capabilities to be able to expand that work and to understand better than we ever have in history how to make these products perform the best. And that's really exciting to me. But it's that, kind of culmination of the work on the genetic side, the metabolomic side, certainly crop physiology, but also from a landscape scale, the fact that we can truly understand the multi-factor approach that's needed relative to farm management and thinking satellite imagery. How do we know more about crop health at certain key stages in the growing cycle, layering all of those data together to make better decisions and, frankly, to design better products. I think that's what's really exciting to me is being able to really integrate those things. So that's, the needs that I see are in the data science, analytics, and integration space. But we also need people who think about this from a systems perspective. That's probably one of the gaps that I've seen, that I think there are companies like ours who are trying to work on closing that gap, is coming at this from a systems perspective or an ecology perspective. So how things interact in soil in particular that can help design better products. And we haven't thought about that in the exact way in the past that we maybe needed to, in part because of the tools we were working with were more single active ingredient based. And we know how to do that better now than we ever have before. And that's really exciting. It's a great place to be.
Along those lines, Keri, I know you and your team there at Jord help companies evaluate biologicals and how they're brought to market and carried to the end user. Suppose you're helping guide a company or a group bring products to market. What advice and how do you advise them? How do you help them evaluate that? I think that'd be interesting to hear.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, how we work with our clients or our customers is to understand the product that they currently have or the ones that they're working on launching. What is it that they're seeking to achieve? And then understanding how those gaps may come to bear. So we work in the microbial side of biologicals, and specifically with companies who have microbe-based products that might be biofertilizers, they might be biostimulants, they might be biopesticides, or a combination of those if they're, a consortia-based product or others. So what we try to do then is to work with them and understand where are they seeing great performance, and then where are they seeing weakness, and trying to diagnose that weakness part to help solve for that and really provide complementary technologies that are able to solve and then deliver, that to the farm gate. If I kind of rewind to your previous question too, one of the things that I neglected to talk about is fermentation capabilities is something that we see a need for globally. There are some parts of the world that have more infrastructure than others. In North America, I think there's a lot of work in the biomanufacturing space that's trying to close that gap. And so that's definitely a need. You have to be able to produce, if it's a microbial based product or a fermentation based product, you've got to have the fermentation ability to do that. And so as I think of bringing that all together, what we also try to do is find partners and serve as, connectors within the industry to say, hey, you might want to look at this type of fermentation capability, or this group over here that has distinct regulatory services that can help with that. But bringing together in a collaborative fashion the best minds to then get the best products, forward for the grower. I think in the end, when you look at this from a landscape perspective and really where the market can go, the better designed products are going to perform. And having that end performance in mind and the consistency of performance. So it's not just, it has high yield potential and it does it 20% of the time. It's providing that return on investment consistently. That will lead to a further increase in adoption, even beyond the CAGRs that we've talked about. And so that to me is a really important factor as we think about sort of where the future can go. Yeah.
Good. So with all this rapid pace, you described it as the greatest point in time we've been in relative to this space. What talent needs or gaps are being exposed?
Yeah, great question. I think kind of going back to the types of skill sets that are required, we touched on that a little bit from a technical perspective. It's obviously like the data science, analytics, systems level thinking. But on the kind of partner side of that, as you think of the marketing and business needs, wanting to be able to have high level of collaboration. So the types of talent that you need to be able to think about what can we within an organization provide, but then importantly, who do we need to partner with that has complementarity to what we need to achieve at the farm gate. So as you think about the talent needs, it has that's not something that you learn in school, right? Those are things that you have to be able to develop on the job and also know within the industry. In the end, ag is a small industry in many ways, but it has huge impact. So being able to understand how you attract and retain talent that has a high degree of technical understanding where it's needed, role by role, but importantly, a collaborative mindset. That's true in your technical roles in R&D, and it's definitely going to be true in your business development and marketing spaces. And then thinking about how you translate what is inevitably complex technical information to the farmer. I think this kind of comes back to one of your previous questions. The way that these products work is not the same as how we have seen traditional products work. So explaining things in the exact same way that we've done in the past may not exactly work. Even how we do field trials, the time points that we take may not be the same. Yield is always important, so I'm not taking away from that. But maybe historically we took, if you're looking at a herbicide trial, you have your application, you go back and you do, your assessment of dead weeds. I'm simplifying for my weed science friends are probably cringing right now. That's not how the trials, they're not that easy. But in essence, you're going back and looking for dead weeds. How biological products work might have distinctly different time points, and being able to show effect over a longer period of time, or maybe it's looking at canopy closure is faster than it is in other, non-biological tool uses. So how we relay this information is going to be more complicated, and yet how do we simplify it to what matters to a farmer? If you have faster canopy closure, you probably are going to have a higher chance of not needing an additional weed control application. So thinking about what matters to a grower in the end is going to be important. And that, I think, is a distinct difference for this space. But also then, as you think about talent, requires people who know in the end what matters to a grower, but that growers make incredibly complex decisions every single day. And how do we help them see how this fits within their complexity?
Awesome. One last question is, what is one piece of technology that you and your team couldn't go without every day?
Oh boy. Well, Teams. So all jokes aside, we use a lot of machine learning and imagery in our work, and that's something that's really important as we automate and get faster. So we're producing higher quality data faster for the clients that we serve. So I joke about using Teams and Zoom. Those are important because we're connectors. We work with our clients collaboratively virtually all the time. But from a technical perspective, we do a lot in that space to be able to enable better, decision making that's data driven.
I guess one last question. I'll
Yeah.
put you on the spot here. How do you see AI, artificial intelligence, playing a role in this space? Is it already playing a role in the space?
Yeah. Oh, I think for sure. If you asked, any company that's working in the bioscience space, probably the majority in ag are using it in some ways. It may not be the obvious ones that you think about, right? They could be using it to generate forms for HR. But in our space, we're also looking at how do we help our scientists be great scientists and not have to count colonies or not have to count nodules on soybean roots, so that there's a machine to do the counting part and we can think about the data and what it means. So that's, maybe one example of how you could see companies like ours using that type of technology.
Awesome. Keri, it's been a pleasure having you with us today. We thank you for carving some time to provide some insights into the biological space.
My pleasure, Eric. Thank you for having me.
Well, and to our listeners, if you want to come and look at the Industry Uncovered Ag Tech podcast series, you can find it at charlesaris.com and go to the agricultural practice, and it'll easily be found. So thank you, and Keri, have a great day.
Thanks, you too.